Last night, after trick or treating, I had the most terrifying experience of my life. It was about 10:30 and I was just hanging out watching TV. All of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. There was someone smashing my front door with their fist. I was instantly freaked out. I slunk down to see out the front windows, hiding behind my plants to try and not be seen. I live in a split-level house, so my living room is about 10 off the ground. I can't see anybody, but there is a black mid-size SUV in my driveway with its lights and hazards on. Being Halloween and having an active imagination, my mind automatically goes to horror movie scenes. This is when I realized my back patio door is difficult to lock most of times and is unlocked. I creep into the basement to get a piece of wood to jam it shut. As I'm coming out of the basement, there's two loud bangs on the basement window along the side of my house. Half the basement is above the ground. Remember, it's a split level. I quick run up and throw the wood to jam the sliding door shut, close the blinds, and creep back up the stairs, turning all the lights off on the way to the living area. As I'm tiptoeing back up and into the living room, I can see the car pulling out of my driveway really, really slow. About an hour later, all seems good, and I'm kind of calming down. I'm sitting on my couch with the lights off, watching TV. I see car lights come across my ceiling from pulling up my inclined driveway. I look out, and it's the black SUV again. Now I'm really scared. I grab my phone and call 911, thinking I'm about to be in next year's urban legend. I'm on my knees, peering through the plants in my window, just watching. Nobody gets out. I can't see the make or license number. It's so dark, just a black SUV with lights and hazards on. The SUV was pulled so far forward their bumper was practically touching my front step slab like 4 from my front door. Nobody gets out. I can't see in the car. They just sit there. I'm on the phone with 911 telling them what happened earlier and what is happening now. The black SUV slowly reverses out of my driveway and leaves. About 20 minutes later, I see the deputy rolling through our subdivision. The subdivision is one way in, one way out, very small and a little rural. As he's coming back down the road, I see my landlord going out, who lives next door. So I open my door to go out there and tell them both what's going on. When I open the door, there is a note taped to it that says, "Derek, we're going to kill you." I'm not Derek. I don't know a Derek. And I don't know why whoever was banging thinks Derek lives here. I double time to the deputy and landlord and tell them about the note and the other happenings. He calls back up. They take the note, ask both me and my landlord a bunch of questions about who this Derek guy is. One of the deputies pulls me aside and starts asking, "Do I owe anybody money? Do I know anybody that would want to hurt me? Am I involved in any sort of lover's triangle?" No, no, and no. He says there will be a deputy in the area, and if anything happens, call 911. Landlord was just going out for mail and swears he has never rented to a Derek, heard anything, saw anything, nothing. Here's the really fucked up part. This morning I was in my office, which is where that patio door I jammed shut is. It was freezing cold in there. I opened the blinds, and the sliding door was about 4 open, meaning someone had tried to open the door after I had put the piece of wood in there to jam it shut. Told the landlord he already has a better lock on mine and his patio door, and built us both a better door jamb. I know this is long. Thanks for reading. I swear all of this is true and happened last night.
"Stephen, I noticed you haven't put out any Halloween decorations this year," said Eve, my nosy neighbor and head of our townhome association. I was in a rush and didn't want to get into it with her. "Yes, I'm well aware, Eve. We're working on it, I reply, trying to maintain my composure. Thanks for the reminder, but I have to go. And please, call me Steve. There are rules to living here, Stephen. You'd best remember that, she said, her tone taking on a disconcerting edge. She swirled around and walked away, her steps eerily quiet. I started pulling out of my driveway, and as I glanced back, I noticed her standing right on the border of our yard, staring directly at me. I sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, my car's engine idling, waiting for the last few cars to pass by so I could leave. A jogger happened to run by. As he did, he yelled back, "Love the way you guys celebrate Halloween on your street? Everything looks so realistic." I grimaced. The last thing I wanted to hear was about how great everyone else's decorations were, putting more pressure on me to keep up. Work ran long, and it was already dark by the time I arrived home. The primary sources of light came from two areas. First, the lampposts, which had been decked out to flash red or orange, bathing the streets in a sinister glow. They were all draped with elaborate decorations, from nooses to alien signaling beacons. Second, a source of the dim light emanated from Eve's yard. She was still out there, adding the finishing touches to her decorations. Satanic symbols, summoning circles, and a fountain of blood now adorned her yard. The eerie ambience became increasingly uneasy as I drew nearer and entered my home. "Honey," Eve called. "About the decorations," Luna, my wife, said as I walked in. "I'm working on it." I snapped back, my frustration evident. The last thing I needed was my wife joining Eve's incessant pestering about Halloween decorations. I knew the neighborhood standards for holiday decor. Luna raised an eyebrow at me, clearly sensing my stress. "Honey, we knew what we signed up for when we moved here. I think we both agree the perks have been worth it. Please appease her. You know what she'll do if we don't comply," she warned. I let out a heavy sigh, realizing my reaction had gone too far. "Yes, dear, I do," I said, softening my tone. "I will get it handled, I promise." After Luna went to bed, I finally had a moment to work on these decorations. I sat down at my computer and browsed for hours, but the selections were slim. Most of the good options were unavailable, and I cursed myself for procrastinating this long. Then I heard a knock at the door. I hesitated, my fingers frozen on the keyboard. Nobody ever visited us at this hour. I tiptoed to the front door and peered through the peephole, then opened the door, revealing a familiar face from the neighborhood. It was Mr. Hollows, one of the neighbors, emerging from the inky darkness. He was clad in a tattered black coat, his face obscured by a twisted, grinning mask. He wasn't wearing a mask for Halloween. His was a permanent fixture, the result of a near-death experience years prior. "Evening, Stephen," he said, his voice a low, chilling murmur. "I've noticed you have yourself a dilemma." I swallowed hard, feeling his gaze weigh me down. "Mr. Hollows, it's been a challenge to find the proper decorations." "Stephen, where's your Halloween spirit?" He took a step closer, and I couldn't help but retreat a pace. His voice remained low. "The Blair's yard is lit up like a carnival of horrors." "What's holding you back?" Slowly extended a gloved hand, revealing a collection of crimson-stained fingers. "You wouldn't want that now, would you?" Nervously, I shook his hand, the icy grip making me wince. "No, Mr. Hollows. I'll get right to it. I promise." His eyes seemed to gleam with an unnatural fervor. "That's what I wanted to hear, Stephen. I do hope you'll find something befitting the occasion. After all, Halloween is a time for revelry, isn't it?" He turned and left, his footsteps fading into the darkened street. Feeling uneasy, I quickly purchased the best props available and had them set for 24-hour delivery. Then I closed the blinds and went to bed, hoping that I wouldn't be having any more neighborly conversations for a while. The next day, after work, Luna and I began setting everything up in the yard. Our yard looked like it came straight out of the French Revolution, complete with its own guillotine. But as I fumbled with a tangled mess of decorations, I felt a figure creep close behind me. Suddenly, a raspy voice whispered, trying to catch up to the Blairs, "Stephen? Looks like you're still missing that special something." Startled, I turned to find Mrs. Stoker, an elderly neighbor notorious for her dark sense of humor. Her face was half concealed by a grotesque mask that appeared more like a genuine human skull than a Halloween costume. "I'm doing my best," I stammered, feeling the need to explain myself. Her skeletal fingers reached out, brushing against fake cobwebs I had set up. "You know, Stephen, it's not just about setting up decorations. It's about embracing the spirit of Halloween, about diving into the darkness." "I'm doing my best to get into the spirit, Mrs. Stoker," I assured her, trying to smile through my unease. She leaned in, her skull mask mere inches from my face. "Are you really, Stephen? Halloween is a time for indulgence. A time for crossing lines you'd never dare to cross in the light of day." I watched as she extended a gnarled hand, presenting an intricate, antique dagger. "How far are you willing to go to please the spirits, Stephen?" My heart raced, and I took a step back. "As far as I need, Mrs. Stoker." Her grating laughter echoed through the night. "Good answer, Stephen. For now, you are safe. But remember, Halloween is a time for reckoning. Those who fail to appease the spirits may find themselves on the wrong side of darkness." With that, she turned and disappeared into the night, her footsteps fading along with her cackling laughter. Later that week, I found myself unable to sleep. Heading outside to the porch, I let the cool breeze blow against my face. That's when I heard it. A strange sound emanating from Eve's yard. It started as a faint melody, barely audible over the rustling leaves. The notes were dissonant and haunting, like a tune played backward. Curiosity got the better of me, and I cautiously approached the fence that separated our properties. Peering through a crack in the wooden panels, I was dumbfounded by what I saw. Eve, dressed in a dark, hooded robe, stood at the center of her yard. She was surrounded by flickering candles that cast shadows on her face. Her voice was barely audible, a low, monotonous chant that sounded like gibberish. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, as though she were in a trance. The ground around her was covered in a series of strange symbols drawn in what looked like blood-red paint. These symbols seemed to come to life, their lines writhing like serpents, as if they were etched in flesh rather than soil. The air grew heavy with an unnatural presence, and the world seemed to warp and shift around Eve. The night itself seemed to hold its breath, as though nature itself were in awe of what was happening. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized that I was witnessing something beyond my comprehension. I quickly retreated from the fence, my mind racing with fear and confusion. If I didn't get this figured out, I was a goner. Early the next morning, I awoke to a sharp pain on my side. My shirt had been stained red, and it had soaked through and sullied the sheets. When I lifted my shirt, I noticed a massive scar on my torso. It was identical to the symbol that had been in Leslie's lawn the day before. Had she fucking cursed me? In a panic, I reached for a laptop and quickly started browsing. I needed to complete my decorations before something worse happened to me. Or worse, to Luna. Days went by, each one stretching my patience and fraying my nerves. The constant scrolling, the never-ending search, and the perpetual frustration gnawed at my sanity. This was maddening. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and my life had become an endless loop of tormenting anticipation. Until finally, I found what I was looking for. A bead of sweat trickled down my forehead as I leaned closer to the screen, my eyes locked on the revelation. "Honey," I shouted, my voice tinged with excitement. "Come here." I heard her stir in the bedroom, and her footsteps, heavy with sleep, approached the office. "What is it?" she asked, her words muffled by a yawn. I pointed to the monitor in front of me, the cursor hovering over the screen. "Well, what do you think?" She squinted at the screen, her eyes tracing the lines and contours. Her sleepy expression slowly transformed into a smile. "Oh, he's flawless. A sacrifice that will even put the Blairs to shame. The perfect final decoration."